How's it going, everyone? Matt Hensley here at JTech, and this video we're going to be going over the automatic transmission, major components, some issues, how it works, kind of just general information over the automatic transmission. So, start off with the major components. You got the oil pump, you got the clutches, you got the bands, the planetary gear sets, which are going to give you the gear ratios that you need for the each shift. You got the shift solenoids that can control which gear you're in, control the shifting and everything. You got the parking pawl, which is just pretty much a little, kind of like a little metal hook that it disconnects the output shaft from the input shaft. So that's what holds your car in park when you're in park. I included ATF fluid in with the component just because, without that, it's not working. It's not going anywhere. Then you got the valve body. Then you got the torque converter, which is not really a part of the automatic transmission, but it is in a way. What that does is it's going to give you the initial gear multiplication. Like when you take off from a stoplight, that's what's going to give you most of that torque. It's going to amplify what the engine gives. That way you can get off to a start. And then now we're going to go into kind of how they work. So you got the clutches and bands. They're going to engage and hold certain gears to give you the different gear ratios throughout the gears. Then you got the pump that's going to provide the line pressure, and that's the pressure that's going to be used by the different valves to apply different gears and to hold the clutches. That way you get that gear ratio. Then you're going to have the planetary gear sets, which are, I'll show them later in the video. But you got your sun gear, you got the carrier assembly, and then you got your ring gear. And that's the gears that get engaged to give you all the gear ratios. And they get engaged by the bands that'll hold the certain gears. They get engaged by the clutches. So everything works in tandem to get those gear sets to give you those gear ratios. The torque converter, like I said, is initial gear multiplication. And when you get up to cruising speed, that torque converter is going to lock up and it's going to spin with the engine. So what that's going to help do is really just helps you with your gas mileage. That way it's not trying to hamper down on like how fast you can go. And then the torque converter is also what causes automatic transmissions because with a manual you got to put it in neutral when you come to the stop or else it stalls. So the torque converter is what does that in automatic transmission. It's going to allow the vehicle to be stopped and still in gear and not stall out. And next we're going to go over different things that can go wrong. So for instance, you got clutch slippage. And that's usually caused by low fluid, a weak pump, not enough friction material on the clutch, on the friction discs in the clutch packs. We'll see that a little later. And what that's going to do is, if you have someone complaining of like loss of power, usually that's going to be slippage. And then along with the slippage, it's going to break down that fluid. It's going to start burning. And that fluid's going to become really burnt. You might smell a burning smell. In other words, it's going to ruin that fluid if it goes on too long. Then you got bad shift timing, which is going to be late shift, early shift. Then you got just no shifting at all. And be caused by various issues. You got bad shift feel, which is just the quality of the shift when it happens. So like a hard shift. And then you got a soft shift where that kind of goes in with shift lag, which is where you'll see the RPM jump up. It's almost like it went in neutral for a little bit before shifting. So that's going to be too soft or really too long of a shift. So too much time in between those shifts. And then with that late shifting, it's just going to be later than usual. Like if you're light on the throttle, it should shift sooner than later. And when you're hard on that throttle, the computer's going to know you need that torque. So it's going to move that shift timing later to give you that max amount of torque through that gear. Then you're going to have lack of power, like I said, usually caused by the slippage between the clutches. Then you got the not full amount of shifts, which usually is going to be electrical issues, which there's a ton of them to even get into. But there's also something called limp mode, which most cars have. And what that's going to do is pretty much the only gear you have is going to be third gear. If it's like a 4-gear transmission, pretty much only going to have third gear in reverse. And that's going to be that limp mode, just to kind of get it to the shop to get it looked at. Next is some of the customer complaints you could have, like the bad timing, the bad quality, some transmission noise. They might hear a whining, a clicking, some knocking, scraping, caused by a bunch of issues. Then you got, they might complain about performance, like something like lack of power. Lack of power is going to be the main issue with the performance side. Then they might have that smell that they come to you about, which again could be that burning smell coming through the dipstick. Could have smoke coming through the dipstick, which is going to mean that the clutches are slipping to the point where it's creating all that friction, all that heat, and it's just tearing away that friction material, and it's heating up that oil to the point where it burns. And then now we got just a few tests you can run on the automatic transmissions. So there's going to be a garage test where you just, like say you got your car in the garage, you just go through the gears, see if it engages and all that. You got the visual inspection, which is pretty self-explanatory. Got the fluid inspection, which is you're going to check the fluid, see if it's burned, see if it smells burnt. And that can give you a lot of signs pointing towards issues. You got the stall test, which I got a video on the stall test, but that can help you figure out whether it's the transmissions, torque converter, the engine. It can give you pretty much a good direction to follow. You got the active test with a scan tool, which is just commanding the automatic transmission to shift, and you'll be able to feel it shift and everything. And it's just making sure all the electrical components are working in order. You got the click test on the solenoids, which is you take a scan tool, you command it to shift and make sure those solenoids are clicking and working right. Time lag test, which is usually, it's really only possible with the scan tool to be able to pause the frame, go back frame by frame, see how much time is between those shifts. You can try to do it with a stopwatch, but they happen so fast, you got like no time. So it's better to do it with a scan tool where you can pause, go back each frame. You got the lockup testing, which is usually, you got it lifted off the ground, you got it in gear, you got a scan tool hooked up to it, and you're pretty much just seeing how far you can go before the lockup engages. You want to look at the speed, the RPM, what gear it's in, all that. It should happen at a 4th gear if you got a 4-gear transmission. So it should happen at 4th gear, lockup, and sometimes it'll happen at certain RPMs. And you want to keep an eye on that oil temperature when you're doing that test, because if it's cold, it's gonna want to lock it up later, well, once it warms up. So it might not lock it up at all. That's why you want to get it to that operating temperature before doing that. Then you got the air pressure test, which is when you have it broken apart, you want to take like an air hose with a regulator, regulate it to certain psi, and then move those clutches while they're in the clutch pack. So you want to see how much force it takes to apply those clutches.